Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Beck, it's good to have you back with us in full voice and good form.
I tell you what, I'm happy to be back in full voice. I don't. I think maybe some people are aware. The last time we were recording, I was down with the flu A, and we were just talking about this. Yeah, my child came. My child brought it home from preschool, and then very quickly I was also down with it. And the problem here is that my 3-year-old was up and running after like 3 days, 2.5 days, and I was out for the entire week. So the optics there, Jim, were not great from other members of the household.
Well,
They thought that I might have been playing it up or something, but yeah, anyhow, the flu this season is, it's no joke, trust me.
yeah, well, I think certainly I can sympathize. I think a lot of people most everybody who has children that go through preschool or certainly through the school system understand exactly what you're talking about because it seems like everything comes home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not just homework and it's not just blue ribbons. It's everything.
Yeah.
So,
It was
uh,
tough. It was a tough week.
yeah, well, glad you survived it. Well,
Me too.
yeah. Okay. Well, good. Today, our discussion, I think, is going to be of great interest to cotton growers, especially that high percentage of growers and others within the industry who traditionally head to the deer stand around harvest time. We have noted for a couple years that deer damage to cotton fields has become an increasing problem. So much so that several of our extension cotton specialists have spearheaded studies to help determine how big an issue this is and how much economic impact it's having on an annual basis. So Camp Hand, who's University of Georgia Extension cotton specialist, was one of the first to recognize the issue and survey his state's growers about the problem. That led into a more formal field study last year, and he's going to join us in just a few minutes to share some of what they found out, as well as what they still need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting conversation, one that we've had with Camp before, Jim. So I'm excited to hear what he's got to say this year. But the first thing we want to do is share a message from our sponsor, Bayer, and their Delta Pine seed brand.
If you're going to succeed, you need cotton that's strong enough to perform around here where you grow. That's why Delta Pine cotton varieties are bred to meet the needs of your neck of the woods and are rigorously evaluated by local growers for maximum performance potential and consistency year after year. Strong cotton performance starts round here with locally tested Delta Pine cotton. Learn more at deltapine.com. Read and follow pesticide label directions, grain marketing, and other stewardship practices.
All right, a big thanks to Bayer and Delta Pine for that message and for their continued support of the Cotton Companion podcast.
Well, Beck, before we get into our deer discussion with Camp, we'd like to quickly review a couple of news items that should be of interest to growers as they finalize production plans for this year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, Jim. So first off, Nutrient Ag Solutions is launching Infinity in 2025. It is an innovative nitrogen management solution combining 3 modes of action to help increase the efficiency and availability of nitrogen for improved plant health and crop yields. Infinity leverages advanced biological technology to optimize nitrogen availability to help a crop receive essential nutrients required for optimal growth and yield. The product's proprietary science is designed to improve nitrogen use efficiency in comparison to current marketplace offerings by enhancing the soil's ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen, recruiting nitrogen-fixing bacteria into the root zone, and facilitating the liberation of nitrogen from soil organic pools. Now, Infinity will be available for purchase through Nutrient Ag Solution retail locations this spring.
And also, from BASF comes word of 6 new cotton varieties coming to the company's FiberMax and Stoneville cotton seed portfolios for 2025. All 6 of these varieties include the Accent Flex quad-stacked herbicide tolerance technology, plus BASF's 3-gene Twin-Link Plus insect control trait. Now, those new varieties are from FiberMax, FM 757AXTP. It's a new early maturing variety for the southwestern states with very good fiber quality, good resistance to bacterial blight, and strong performance across a variety of soil types. Also from FiberMax comes FM 814 AXTP, an early to mid maturing variety for the northern and southern high plains, rolling plains, and Oklahoma, with excellent verticillium wilt tolerance, resistance to bacterial blight, and good tolerance to root knot nematodes and fusarium wilt. Now, from Stoneville comes four varieties, all of them targeted primarily to the North Delta, South Delta, Mid Atlantic, and far west regions of the Cotton Belt. The first is ST 4215 AXTP. That's an early maturing variety that's well suited for irrigated production, and it has good resistance to bacterial blight. Next is Stoneville 4833 AXTP, an early to mid maturing variety uh, with large seed size and excellent emergence, good performance on dry land and sandy soils, tolerance to root knot nematodes, verticillium wilt, fusarium wilt, and a strong resistance to bacterial blight. Next is Stoneville 5835 AXTP. It's a mid to full maturing variety that also has a good fit over in East and South Texas and Oklahoma. It fits well on sandier soils, has tolerance to root knot nematodes and resistance to bacterial blight. And finally, it's Stoneville 5931 AXTP, which is a mid to full maturing variety with good performance on many soil types, resistance against reniform and root knot nematodes, tolerance against fusarium wilt and verticillium wilt, and resistance to bacterial blight. More information on the entire FiberMax and Stoneville variety portfolio can be found online at fibermax.com and at stoneville.com. And also, one other item to mention before we move on to the interview with Camp. The 73rd Annual Mid-South Farm and Gin Show is going to be opening its doors February 28th and March 1st at the Renaissance Convention Center in Memphis, Tennessee. The annual event features U.S. and international exhibitors displaying new equipment, machinery, technologies, and multiple products and services for cotton and other major Mid-South crops. This year's show features more than 300 exhibitors, including 75 new exhibitors that are bringing new products and services to market. In addition to 3 entire floors of exhibits, attendees can attend several educational seminars focusing on key markets and issues. You can find more information about the show particulars at cottongrower.com. Now, shows for the Mid-South Farm and Gin Show are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on February 28th and 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on March 1st. Pre-registration is available. It is encouraged, and you can do that by visiting farmandginshow.com. There is no cost for registration. This will just help you get through in the door a little bit quicker. Well, now let's take some time to focus on what seems to be an ever-expanding wildlife situation for cotton and other crops. And to help us out with that discussion is University of Georgia Extension Cotton Specialist Camp Hand, who is graciously joining us between meetings and flight schedules, because after all, cotton meeting season's in full swing, and he is one busy man right now. So, Camp, thanks for joining us. I hope we can at least give you a few minutes to catch your breath.
Oh yeah, thanks guys. I always take a second to talk about deer. Always.
Yeah, great. Well, the first time I heard you talk about the impact that deer damage was potentially causing in your state, I think was 2 years ago at your university field day in Tifton.
Mhm.
You were getting ready at that point to start surveying growers about the problem to try to get a handle on yield and monetary loss from deer. What did you find out from that first survey?
Yeah, the survey was eye-opening. And I mean it was wild because all I did was we went around to all these grower meetings that we do and I handed out a one-page survey. How many acres are you farming? What percent of your acres are affected by white-tailed deer? What is your percentage yield loss on those acres? And then how much money are you spending on trying to help stop that problem? And then what are you doing? And so, and I actually did it for growers, consultants, and county agents as
Mm.
well, just to kind of see if everybody's aligned. Are we all saying the same thing? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes. That everybody's preaching the same message. Everybody's saying that, I mean, 100% or 99 plus percent deer are a problem in cotton in Georgia. Okay. And so, um, but I mean, you see a range there of responses, but on average, the response was about 40% acres affected, about 40% yield loss on those acres, and guys are spending 50 some odd dollars an acre attempting to slow them down, and the largest things they're doing to help with the issue are utilizing depredation permits through Department of Natural Resources, which is, you're sitting out there during the summertime and trying to um, scare them off or reduce the population a little bit during summertime. And then a lot of guys have replanted cotton because of this issue. And then you've got repellents are being utilized. I think it was something like 50% of people told me they were using some kind of repellent, which to me says, hey, we're in desperation mode, because that's something that is not proven to work, and we're just kind of we're trying something. We're trying anything. But the eye-opening part to me was how white-tailed deer relate to other pests. And it was amazing to put, a number to the white-tailed deer based on our acreage and our our yield numbers and the price and stuff like that, and compare it to, I emailed Dr. Culpepper and Dr. Kimwright and Dr. Roberts, and I asked all them, like, what's your most problematic pest
Hmm.
in each of your areas, and then answer these same questions that I asked the growers. And of course, Stanley says Palmer pigweed, right? And
Right.
so, of course, and then Dr. Kimwright says root knot nematodes, and
Mhm.
Dr. Roberts says stink bugs. And so, whenever you look at them in based on that 1 year's numbers, white-tailed deer were impacting Georgia cotton to the tune of $150 million.
Wow.
And then everything else was pigweed was like 104, and then root knot nematodes was below that, and then stink bugs was the lowest. And so that to say that this problem exceeds palm or pigweed is drastic. And so it's like, man, that was the most eye-opening part of the survey to me. But again, that it was growers and consultants and county agents all gave me very similar responses, and they all exceeded Palmer pigweed. So it's not like it was just a flash in the pan type thing. All
Right.
three groups across, it was probably close to 600 total responses told me, hey, this is how bad it is, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I think that's a great reflection on the fact that, you've got programs in place for weed control. You've got
Mhm.
programs
Yep.
and everything in place for insects and for nematodes, but deer's a totally different situation,
Right.
you know?
Right.
You know
That's the thing is I talked about um all these different management tactics, and a lot of work has gone into stink bug management, right? In the 90s, after boll weevil was eradicated, and you had BT cotton, we had to learn how to manage stink bugs, and it took time, but we got these programs in place. There's thresholds set,
Right.
and with root knot nematodes, there's thresholds on when you need to take action, when you need to plant a resistant variety, when you need to use a nematicide, and then the weed control programs for palm or pigweed are, hey, you once you plant the crop, you can pretty much put it on a calendar. Every 2 weeks, you're gonna be in the field doing something to
Mhm.
try to reduce the impact of palmer amaranth on your cotton or any other crop. But on deer, we just don't have that, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know this, as we talked before, this is not just a University of Georgia study.
Mm-mm.
And I know, other states are working on it, but you in Georgia, you're consulting with and working with Georgia Department of Natural Resources, I believe, on this as
We're
well.
yeah, so we're gonna actually have a meeting at the end of March, and it's gonna be a lot of these different states in the cotton belt, and we're gonna have DNR as part of that meeting. But kind of in my conversations with growers and things like that, I'm able to relay some things to DNR kind of on their behalf, just talking about, hey, this is why it's such a issue. We need to be talking about this and things like that. But really, what we've done, I've gotten a couple of graduate students that are doing projects, and And what we've done is generated some data to take to them and say, hey, this is not just people complaining about something. This is real, you know? And so that's kind of the first step. And then we'll go to DNR. And of course, some things are about to change, I imagine, with the way that deer hunting goes in Georgia, because we just detected chronic wasting disease. And so,
Okay.
like in the last couple weeks. So there's going to have to be some conversations surrounding a lot of different things with respect to deer season and how things are handled and stuff like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like we could take that opportunity to potentially get our foot in the door there as well.
Sure. Now, we're going to get into some particulars on the study that you folks figured out or worked on last year. But before we do that, there's a world of difference in what you're trying to do with deer as opposed to what's going on for eradication of wild boars, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, the hogs, and that, you know, that's something in my conversations with growers, they try to liken the two, and that is not what we want to do. You know, the white-tailed deer were almost hunted to extinction. You know, I mean, I think the population in Georgia in the early 1900s was right around 6,000 or something was the estimation, and now we're over a million white-tailed deer in the state, which obviously is probably too many, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it does bring in a lot of revenue. I like to hunt them myself. And so it's like, it's a success story in terms of conservation and things like that. But the wild boar is an invasive species, you know, and so it's like kudzu, right? I mean, we just need to get rid of that, you know, and so there's a lot of programs in terms of trying to help with wild boars and things like that. But for sure, the wild boars are invasive. That needs to be handled totally different as opposed to managing the white-tailed deer population. Number one, so it's not a problem in ag areas, and number two, a lot of the stuff that I've read, a similar population for white-tailed deer would be optimal for agriculture and optimal for our trophy hunters as well. So there's a lot of benefits to go around in terms of managing the population.
Okay.
Yeah, Camp, I'm glad you mentioned the hunting aspect. I am a deer hunter too, although I've been skunked for the past 3 seasons, so I am in no way beneficial for
Oh, now, Beck, any of the now look, now, are you seeing them, or you just not pulling the trigger?
Well, you know, the toddler running around this household really puts a hamper on my number of hours I get in the woods, but it's a story for a different podcast. But I do try. I try to help out.
That's right, that's right.
So I know a little bit about them too, and I know that deer is really a transient animal. Lord knows they are. I can't keep them near me. So, what did you do in your field study to try to measure feeding with a animal that is as transient as a white-tailed deer?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we learned is that, you know, I was trained by Dr. Culpepper here at Georgia, and I was trained on plants. I was not trained on animals. I'm not a wildlife biologist. You know, but I'm like you, Beck. I'm a deer hunter, and I've got cameras, and I do all this stuff. And you think you got them figured out, but then they go and do something different, and it messes you all up. And so that we learned some lessons like that this year, and it's just fascinating to see and watch their behavior and learn about it. But you know what we did in grower fields was reached out to our county agents in Georgia. I told them, I said, hey, I've got this student. We're going to start doing this project trying to really document real yield losses from white-tailed deer, wild white-tailed deer populations. And so it's in grower fields. It's based on the pressure that they have, all that kind of stuff. And we went and we put up exclusion cages right when the crop was planted, and it encompassed about 3 rows wide and 15-foot long. And in between the cages is where the deer ate. They did not get in the cages. And I mean, you think, you know, it's 15-foot long by 9 foot wide approximately. And I'm taller than the cages. So it was about 5 foot tall. Okay. You sit there and you think about it, and it's like, well, a deer can jump something that's 5 foot tall, but we did a lot of testing on prototypes and stuff like that, trying to figure out the best way to keep them out. And what we ended up on was we built this cage with T-posts, and it was a wildlife exclusion fence really for like homeowners. But I built one and poured corn on the inside of the cage and nothing outside. And so it was a worst case scenario. If they wanted to eat, they had to get in the cage and they would not do it. And so we did a lot of testing ahead of getting in grower fields and stuff like that, but we would put 3 to 4 cages, depending on the amount of space we had, at a uniform distance from the edge of the field, just to make sure everything was uniform, you know. And then we took data throughout the year, stand counts early on, and then that was separated into what was killed by the deer, like what was bitten below the cotyledons, as opposed to what was fed on above the cotyledons, and thus would result in harvestable yield. You know, you would assume, right? But then you get to the end of the year, we took plant heights, percent open bowl, and yield as well. We hand harvested all of this, and we did it in 20 locations across Georgia. And so we tried to really get a good picture of from east to west what was going on. Some on experiment stations, most of them were on farm. And you know, it was fascinating to see where I thought we had a problem on the experiment station. It paled in comparison to what we were seeing in grower fields, in most situations. And we even did put up deer cameras to get deer density in those areas, just to kind of see if we could correlate the deer density numbers to the amount of damage we were seeing. And so it was a very, very intense undertaking. And my graduate student Lance, he really took it and run with it and has done a great job at the meetings that we've been to Beltwide. And right now I'm at the Southern Region Agronomy meeting here in Dallas, and he's done a great job presenting the data and explaining it to folks. He grew up on a farm, and he's like, "Hey, this stuff is impactful because that can help pay your rent, you know, kind of thing." And so he's really taken it and run with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, many of our listeners like us would be familiar with deer hunting as well, and the concept
Yeah.
of measuring density in an area. Boy, that's a tricky ask. So my hat's off to you guys for putting that much work in to be able to figure those out. Cam, can you tell me, we kinda mentioned, I think before we started recording, deer repellents. Have you guys done any work on deer repellents on your end?
Right. So this is one of those stories, and you talking about you think you got them figured out, and then they go and switch up on you. You know that's what happened. I thought I had the perfect piece of land in Tifton, and I was like, man, this is going to be my deer repellent spot. You know, and we did a very small scale deer repellent study last year, and really were shocked to see that they did work. All right. You have to spray them once a week, but it did prevent the deer or deter the deer as long as they had another option to eat. All right. So there's 2 big pieces there. The first one is that we had to spray it once a week. And then the second one is they had an option for something without a repellent. Okay. So we saw that 2 years ago, and I said, man, it wasn't like 300 yards away. There was a 10-acre half of a pivot that we weren't able to plant cotton on because it was so wet. And I said, man, we should plant soybeans here and try to do a bunch of deer repellent work. And so we planted 10 acres worth of soybeans and initiated like 6 or 7 deer repellent trials. Dr. Roberts took the lead on that, him and his crew. But I mean, we started spraying them things, sprayed them every week for 8 weeks, and not a deer track could be found in that field. Okay.
Well, so I see every single one of them, it works perfectly then, all the deer.
Oh, that's right. Well, so did the non-treated. You didn't have to spray one. But the thing that was fascinating was just how they ate everywhere else. They were eating peanuts on the north side. The soybeans were on the south side, so they didn't eat those. There was cotton close to that, and they were eating on that cotton a little bit. We planted soybeans down in the same spot we did a year ago, and they ate those to the ground. cotton all the way to the east side of the farm where we planted another couple rows of soybeans, and those were eaten off too. So it's just like, I mean, they're so unpredictable and it's so hard to do that kind of research. But it even impacted some of our exclusion cage work because the station manager up in Midville, Georgia, Anthony Black, he called me and he was like, "Man, I've got the perfect spot for this. They wear me out down in this corner right here, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, great, we'll be there tomorrow." And so we went up there and put cages up and all this stuff. And lo and behold, for the first time in like 20 years, Anthony's neighbor planted soybeans. And so the deer didn't go to the cotton, they went to the soybeans. And I was just like, man, like, you think you got them figured out and then something changes and they do something different.
Yeah.
Well, Camp, I know we've talked before about, it's not just Georgia that's doing this study, but I think
Right.
Alabama, South Carolina, you mentioned Florida is getting into some
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
Uh, and you've got a meeting coming up here, I think you said at the end of March. What are you hoping to do in terms of pulling all this together as sort of a coalition to take this study kind of at least halfway across the Cotton Belt?
Yeah, yeah. So, I would say it is kind of concentrated, and I mean, even in Mississippi, Beck, that's where my folks live. That's where I'm from. But I mean, I know some growers where in the little town where I'm from, Bolton, that have that issue too. So it's like, but it seems like it's on the east side of the Mississippi River. Is kind of what it feels like. I know that there's some issues in Arkansas and Louisiana and potentially even a Boot Hill, Missouri, but it's just over this way, the landscape is different,
Mhm.
and there's just more places for them to go to sleep, pretty much, and hang out right on the edges of these fields and stuff. But what we're doing is one of the faculty at UGA, Dr. Glenn Rains, has kind of gotten a seed grant to form this team, and that way we can try to start working together and start moving in the right direction. A lot of folks have tried to do a lot of the same things. Some have been more successful than others. And so even just learning lessons about what has been done, I think will help inform us on what needs to be done moving forward. But two, we are going to have some growers come and kind of share their experiences, and then also DNR is gonna be there. Some of the Farm Bureau folks are gonna be there as well. I think there's just a lot of opportunity to learn and try to find out where do we go from here. There was a grower at the Beltwide from North Georgia, and he's got him a deer problem. And we talk about it a lot, and he went to my students' talk and he showed all the data and, hey, we're losing yield on the farm. It's delaying maturity, reducing plant heights, reducing stands, all this kind of stuff. And I asked Lee, I said, "Lee, did you listen to the talk?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "He did good." And he said, "But now you got to tell me what to do about it." And I said, "Okay." I said, "All right." I said, "I'm with you. So that's kind of the next step, is trying to figure out what works and how are we going to live with this? Because this is a long-term thing. And I mean, even thinking about the place where I deer hunt, I mean, I go out there and I really try to do my part during deer season. And but even still, it's a numbers game, right? If
Right.
if half the deer in the woods are does and half of those drop a fawn in the summertime, if every hunter only shoots eight, here's another stat: 84% of Georgia hunters shoot one or less doe during deer season. All right. So if everybody's doing that, then we're never going to catch up. You know, we got to be out there doing our part. If you're a deer hunter out there in the cotton belt or whatever, and you're listening to this podcast, I hope you go out there and you do your part during deer season. Deer season's out in just about everywhere now, but this coming up deer season, I hope you
Mm.
have intent to go uh, help us out a little bit, because it's a numbers game. The more deer there are, the more reproductive potential there is, and the more likely that we're going to keep having this problem moving forward. And so it's certainly a complicated issue.
Yeah. I think complicated is probably exactly the best way to put it. And
Yeah,
obviously, that means there's just a whole lot more to find out this year. Like you
that's right.
said. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, our plan right now is we're going to keep checking on you along the way to see how these studies shape up. this
Oh,
year
yeah.
and things like that. But Camp, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us. We know you got a plane to catch. We appreciate your time, and we'll be checking on you and catching up with you again soon. So safe
Oh, yeah.
travels back. Safe travels back to Georgia, friend.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hey, y'all come to Georgia sometime. We'll record in our room and I'll cook like deer burgers or something. We'll do
Hey,
something
now that
fun.
sounds like a deal right there.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, all right, that's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. We want to say thanks again to Camp Hand of the University of Georgia for joining in today's discussion. And thanks too to Delta Pine for their continuing sponsorship of the podcast. And as always, we want to thank you, dear listener, for joining us and for your continued support. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you did like what you've heard, please be sure and spread the word about the Cotton Companion. Tell your buddies about the podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
The Cotton Companion podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman. He's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks. Next time, of course, after the National Cotton Council's annual meeting, and we'll see you then with the next episode of the Cotton Companion.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.